48, the guard yells. His right jacket sleeve has the letters SS on them. Dad says that it stands for Simon Says, and that we're going to be playing a big game where everyone's got a number, and whenever Simon calls your number, you have to do whatever Simon says, otherwise you lose the game. Yes, sir, I say. 49, Simon says. Yes, sir, Dad says. Simon continues walking down the single file of players, I suppose there'd be about 400 of us, calling out each one's number to make sure they're not missing out on the game. I think this is one of the longest and weirdest games I've played. It's been going on for about a week or so. It's hard to keep track of time in the game because everyone's wristwatch was taken away before we started it. And Dad still hasn't told me how to win. In good time, Charlie, he keeps saying when Simon isn't around. Dad says that we can't use our real names when we're in the game because that's against the rules and we'll lose the game. Dad also hasn't told me what happens if you lose the game either. 74, Simon says. Yes, says a voice that sounds like someone around my age. This is normally what happens at the beginning of each day. We all stand in one long line and wait for Simon to make sure all the players are here before we get our bit of bread and soup for the day. I asked Dad why the bread was so stale and the soup was so watery. He just said it's because Simon doesn't make it easy for people to win the game, whatever that means. 106, Simon says. Charlie, Dad whispers from behind me. You see something? The one past the food troughs and the huts. Yeah? I say, squinting at the fence over yonder. A few days ago, Mum, Dad and I were eating breakfast at our big dining table at our home in Vienna. I was having my Sunday morning special, 2 boiled eggs with soldiers. Before eating it, I would stack my soldiers 3 by 3 to create a mini tower while Mum would peel the shell of the eggs. She'd always give me a big kiss on my forehead with her red lips before I started eating and say, now everyone will know you're my boy. I never really got what she meant and it got a little annoying sometimes, but I loved smelling her rosy perfume as she leaned over to kiss my forehead, so it wasn't so bad. Just before I placed the last soldier on the tower, the front door slammed open and a bunch of Simons barged into our house without even knocking and dragged us out into the street. I kicked and screamed at the Simon that dragged me because I didn't know it was a game yet. The Simons took us to the train station where all the other players were rounded up. While we were waiting, Dad told me about the game and its main rule, to do what Simon says. Then, the Simons told all of us to board the train. I giggled because there were way too many of us to fit and I thought Simon was telling a joke, but then Dad shushed me, knelt, and whispered in my ear, Charlie, remember the main rule. The carriages on the train were so full that only the very top parts of the window were free, so I didn't get to see anything for the whole trip. The only part I remember was towards the end when a few players who were at the window and tall enough to see out started crying. Then, as some whispered travelled through the carriage, almost everyone cried. All I could make out was something about a sign and ouch wits. I was really confused, so I tugged on Dad's left trouser pocket and asked him what was happening. He just said the game's going to be harder than I thought, Charlie. Shortly after that, the train stopped, everyone got off, we all got in the first big, long line, we're much better at it now, and got our numbers tattooed on our forearms. While Dad was getting his tattoo, Mum knelt to look me in the eyes and I realised her makeup looked funny. She had watercolour black lines running from her eyes. She just looked at me for a bit, then, after a few seconds, licked her thumb and wiped off the red lips on my forehead that I had completely forgotten about from earlier today. Then Mum gave me the biggest hug I've ever gotten and a Simon took her to the girls' area. I haven't seen Mum since then, but I swear I can still smell her rosy perfume from that hug. 372, Simon says. Yes, sir, a faint voice says. It started raining pretty heavily about 5 minutes ago. I hate this part of the game because we're not allowed to go undercover and we just have to stand still. The thing that makes it okay is that all the players move closer to each other in the single file line, and the body heat makes me feel a bit warmer. My feet start to muddy and blacken as the rain picks up and patters against the grey dirt. It's so loud that I can barely hear Simon's voice down the line. This is when Dad starts whispering to me again as I continue facing the front of the line. Can you feel your shoes sinking a little bit, Charlie? I nod and squirm as I feel mud touch my unsocked left foot. The more rain there is, the softer the dirt gets. The softer the dirt gets, the easier it is to dig. Are you following, Charlie? I nod again and figure out what Dad's getting at. The next time we're in our huts at night and the rain's so loud that we can't sleep, that's when we'll make our move. But when the time comes, we need to make sure the rain's really loud, because that'll mean it'll be hard to spot us once we're outside the hut. Charlie, when that time comes, it's going to be like the finale of the game, and thud. Splat. I turn around and see Dad, still as a plank of wood, lying on his right-hand side in the mud, almost engulfed by it, and Simon to his right, holding a rifle by the muzzle. Dad! I scream so loud it hurts. As the rain pours on the left-hand side of Dad's face, it clears the specks of mud and a large red oval-like shape on his temple appears. It's the same shape as the butt of Simon's rifle. Two Simons drag Dad's body away while another picks me up and demands that I stop screaming. I don't do as Simon says. It's been days since I saw Dad dragged away by the Simons. I feel lonely without him or Mum around, but that only makes me want to win the game even more. Each night I lie next to other players on the floor of one of the huts, unable to sleep, waiting for the really loud rain to come. I usually spend this time thinking about every move I'll take to win, or asking other players next to me whether they've seen my dad. The mini games we play every day are so tiring that most people fall asleep the moment their heads hit the wooden floor, so I never really get an answer. But I keep asking each night anyway. The thought of another player saying something positive about Dad is really nice and helps me get through the mini games. Tonight, I'm lying next to 83 on my left and 129 on my right. I turn my head to 83 and ask him my usual question. Have you seen my dad? He's number 49 and a few Simons dragged him away a few days ago. No answer. I turn to 129. Have you seen my... Out of nowhere, the drizzle of rain outside becomes a downpour. It's like God took every cloud on the planet and moved them so they're right above our heads. Dad? 129's eyes open. Huh? The rain gets louder. Have you seen my dad? I scream, trying to speak over the rain that's now woken up just about every player in the hut. Huh? 129 asks again. How have you... And then I remember. This is how I win the game. After I won the game, I ran for what felt like an eternity through the black of night with gashes on my back, caused by metallic wires of the fence's foundation as I crawled under it. I eventually found a road and waited by its side until daybreak, when there was better visibility for me to identify the vehicles passing me by. I hailed a truck with a big red cross on the side of it, and that proved to be my salvation. The Red Cross helped me locate my dad's sister, my Aunt Amy, who turned out to be a fellow escapee. Amy never had kids or a husband. She was always that cool auntie who was footloose and fancy-free. I told her what happened to Dad and she woke me up to the reality of his demise. But I never heard anything about Mum. Amy and I eventually made our way back to Vienna, back to my family home that looked eerily similar to the way it was left when the soldiers took us away. It's been 6 years since that day and 1 month since the war ended. I'm having my Sunday morning special. 2 boiled eggs with soldiers. But I don't create a mini tower out of the soldiers anymore. I just rip them apart and eat them. I gaze outside through the dining room window, into the backyard where the wind is blowing a gale, fueling a maelstrom of autumn leaves. Suddenly, the front door slams open, and my body instinctively ceases up. I reassure myself, Charlie, it's just the wind. I get out of my seat to go and close the door, and that's when the scent hits my nostrils. The scent of roses. That is a wrap on Simon Says. I hope you enjoyed the story.